Welcome to our exploration of women and the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. In 2015, the United Nations adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, a global framework aiming to eradicate poverty, tackle climate change, and build peaceful, inclusive societies. Unlike its predecessor, the Millennium Development Goals, the SDGs are broader, integrating economic, environmental, and social dimension. Crucially, gender equality is now a standalone goal, with targets for women's empowerment woven throughout the agenda. This video will guide you through how women are both affected by and essential to achieving each of the 17 SDGs, with a special focus on real-world initiatives and impacts in Eastern and Southern Africa. 2030 Agenda marks a significant shift from previous development frameworks. It applies to all countries, not just developing ones, and sets out an ambitious vision, ending poverty, combating climate change, and building resilient, equitable societies. For the first time, gender equality is recognized not only as a goal in itself, but as a key driver for progress across all areas. The agenda calls for sex-disaggregated data and gender targets in multiple goals, ensuring that women's experiences and needs are visible and addressed. This comprehensive approach is vital for sustainable progress and for ensuring that no one is left behind. Women and girls are not just beneficiaries of the SDGs, they are key agents of change. Their participation and leadership are essential to achieving each goal. From eradicating poverty to promoting peace, women's voices, skills, and experiences drive progress. The UN Women Eastern and Southern Africa region has highlighted how women are affected by each SDG and how their empowerment accelerates achievement. Through data, stories, and concrete examples, we see that investing in women and girls leads to stronger, more resilient communities and sustainable outcomes for all. Ending poverty is impossible without ending gender-based discrimination. Across the globe, gender inequality keeps women poor, depriving them of basic rights and opportunities. Women contribute significantly to their households and communities, yet face barriers such as limited access to land, credit, and technology. Only 20% of landowners worldwide are women. UN women's initiatives like the Rural Women Economic Empowerment Program in Ethiopia provide training, loans, and practical skills to empower women economically. These efforts help women gain control over resources, access social protection, and build resilience against economic shocks. Ethiopia, UN Women supports the government's efforts to accelerate rural women's economic empowerment. The Rural Women Economic Empowerment Program, launched globally in 2012 and in Ethiopia in 2014, aims to secure women's livelihoods and rights. Implemented in partnership with government and national stakeholders, the program aligns with Ethiopia's growth and transformation plan. It provides tailored support, including access to training, credit, and technology, enabling women to improve their income and well-being. This initiative demonstrates how targeted interventions can help women break the cycle of poverty and contribute to national development. Women are central to food security, preparing up to 90% of meals globally. Yet in times of crisis, women and girls often eat less and face greater risks of malnutrition. Despite making up a large share of the agricultural workforce, women have less access to land, credit, and technology, limiting their productivity. UN Women supports women farmers through training and access to information, helping them achieve higher yields and better nutrition for their family. Legal reforms and awareness campaigns also aim to ensure women's equal rights to assets and resources, strengthening food security for all. Boost rural women's access to agricultural technologies. UN Women partnered with organizations like the African Union and FAO to host a regional share fair for rural women's technologies. Over 100 innovators from 14 countries showcased affordable solutions to improve productivity, nutrition, and income. The event led to the creation of a technology repository and a promotion group to scale up these innovations, potentially reaching millions of women. Initiatives like the African Women in Technology (AWIT) and edutainment programs further expand access to information and empower women to lead in sustainable agriculture. Health is a fundamental right, but gender-based discrimination undermines women's access to care. Women are more susceptible to diseases like HIV/AIDS, and often lack the resources or autonomy to seek medical help. In developing regions, maternal mortality remains high, and many women have unmet needs for reproductive health services. UN Women works with governments and partners to improve health services, end harmful practices, and support women living with HIV. By making health systems more responsive to women's needs, societies can ensure better outcomes for all. UN Women's Eastern and Southern Africa Office, in partnership with LVCT Health and other institutions, developed training programs to strengthen the leadership and advocacy skills of women living with HIV and caregivers. These programs use peer-to-peer and mentorship models to empower women to influence health policies and frameworks. By building the capacity of women leaders, these initiatives ensure that women's voices are heard in national and regional health strategies, aligning with SDG 3's goal of healthy lives and well-being for all. Education is a right that empowers individuals and drives social and economic progress. While primary school enrollment has improved globally, significant gaps remain, especially for poor rural girls in sub-Saharan Africa. Gender stereotypes and barriers persist in secondary and higher education. UN Women promotes inclusive, high-quality education by revising curricula, improving access to technology, and training teachers and youth leaders. Special programs aim to prevent violence and empower girls to stay in school, ensuring lifelong learning opportunities for everyone. Malawi, UN Women collaborates with the Ministry of Education and organizations like Girls Not Brides to implement strategies that keep girls in school. Advocacy efforts focus on ending child marriage and early pregnancies, which are major barriers to education. Traditional and religious leaders are engaged to support girls' education, and best practices are shared with communities for replication. Events like the National Girls' Education Conference and advocacy campaigns empower youth to voice their needs and promote equality in the education system. Achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls is at the heart of the SDGs. Despite progress, deep disparities remain in economic and political spheres, and violence against women is still widespread. Legal reforms are needed to guarantee women's rights, and proactive measures like quotas can help close gaps. UN Women works to empower women through leadership programs, economic initiatives, and advocacy for ending violence. Engaging men and boys as allies is also crucial for lasting change. UN Women in Kenya has partnered with the National Gender and Equality Commission to advance transformative gender equality. Initiatives include developing tools to measure inclusivity at the county level and building capacity for gender-responsive budgeting. These efforts ensure that government planning and budgeting reflect women's needs and that progress is monitored effectively. By supporting public and private sector partnerships, UN Women helps create an environment where women can thrive and contribute fully to national development. Access to safe water and sanitation is essential for health and dignity. While progress has been made, millions still rely on unsafe sources. For women, inadequate water supplies mean spending hours collecting water, often at the expense of education or paid work. Poor sanitation can keep girls out of school and spread disease. UN Women helps governments design policies that address women's needs, such as gender-responsive budgeting for water projects. These efforts free up women's time, improve health, and support girls' education. Sustainable energy is vital for development, from lighting homes to powering health centers. Women, often primary energy managers in households, spend hours collecting fuel when modern energy is unavailable. This exposes them to health risks and limits opportunities. Yet women are underrepresented in the energy sector workforce. UN Women supports initiatives like training women as solar engineers and promoting clean cookstoves. In Uganda, media campaigns and stakeholder consultations have led to government action to improve energy services in health centers, benefiting women and children. UN Women's efforts in Tanzania and South Sudan focus on solar energy projects targeting women. These initiatives not only provide clean, reliable energy, but also empower women to participate in the energy sector. By involving women in planning and implementation, these projects ensure that energy solutions meet their needs and contribute to broader development goals. Partnerships with organizations like the UN Foundation and WHO help scale up best practices and secure funding for sustainable energy and health facilities. Inclusive, sustainable economic growth benefits everyone. While more women are in paid employment than ever before, they still face barriers such as lower wages, legal restrictions, and occupational segregation. UN Women advocates for equal pay, safe workplaces, and access to financial services. Programs build women's capacity to secure decent jobs and influence economic policies. Engaging the private sector through the women's empowerment principles helps create equal opportunities in the workplace and beyond. Since 2012, UN Women has focused on building the capacity of women entrepreneurs in Kenya, especially in public procurement. Training and dialogue forums at the county level help women understand how to bid for government contracts and access trade finance. By bringing together suppliers, procurement officers, and financial institutions, these initiatives address barriers and create opportunities for women to participate fully in economic growth. Gender-responsive budgeting is also promoted to ensure that economic policies benefit women. Resilient infrastructure and sustainable industrialization are foundations for economic development. However, women are underrepresented in construction, manufacturing, and research. Only 25% of researchers in advanced economies are women. UN Women advocates for gender-sensitive planning and investment in infrastructure, ensuring that women have access to essential services and opportunities in emerging industries. Promoting women's participation in innovation and technology is key to building a sustainable future for all. Inequalities within and among countries have grown, often hitting women hardest. Gender discrimination intersects with other forms of inequality such as age or disability, multiplying disadvantages. Women are more likely to be in informal or unprotected jobs and earn less than men. UN Women advocates for decent work, social protection, and gender-sensitive economic policies. By eliminating discriminatory laws and promoting equal opportunities, these efforts help close the gender gap and reduce inequalities across societies. UN Women's research in Malawi, Tanzania, and Uganda highlights the economic costs of gender gaps in agriculture. The study found that closing the gap between male and female farmers could lift up to 400,000 people out of poverty in these countries. By generating credible evidence and building capacity, UN Women influences policies and interventions that reduce inequalities and promote women's empowerment. These data-driven approaches ensure that development strategies are effective and inclusive. Urbanization offers opportunities but also brings challenges, especially for women. Many women in cities face risks such as unsafe public spaces, limited access to services, and vulnerability during disasters. UN Women's Safe Cities Global Initiative works with local governments and communities to make urban spaces safer for women and girls. Disaster risk reduction planning and training help women become more resilient and mitigate the effects of climate change in urban environments. Kigali, Rwanda, UN Women and the city municipality have improved safety and productivity for women hawkers by constructing mini markets with essential infrastructure. These markets provide safe spaces, storage, sanitation, and childcare facilities, addressing the needs of women in the informal sector. The initiative reduces risks of violence and harassment, supports livelihoods, and contributes to urban development goals. Sharing best practices at global forums helps scale up successful approaches to safe cities worldwide. Unsustainable consumption and production threaten the planet's resources and climate. Women, especially in developing countries, often lack access to land and technology needed for sustainable livelihoods. UN Women advocates for policy reforms that promote equitable ownership and use of resources. Regional events like the Share Fair on gender equality in extractive industries bring together stakeholders to share best practices and develop solutions for women's participation in sustainable production sectors. Share Fair on gender equality in extractive industries, held in Nairobi, brought together over 400 participants to discuss innovations and best practices for women's empowerment. The event focused on building partnerships, sharing research, and developing legal frameworks to support women in the sector. By increasing women's participation and leadership, these efforts help ensure that extractive industries contribute to sustainable development and improved livelihoods for women. Climate change poses growing risks, especially for poor women who are often the first to feel its impacts. Disasters, droughts, and resource scarcity threaten livelihoods and well-being. Women's traditional knowledge and experience as resource managers make them valuable contributors to climate solutions. UN Women advocates for women's participation in climate decision-making and supports initiatives that build resilience and adaptation capacity in vulnerable communities. Recognizing the need for more knowledge on women's resilience, UN Women plans to hold a Share Fair on gender and resilience to foster collaboration among regional stakeholders. The event aims to identify challenges, share data, and mobilize resources for effective solutions. By creating strong networks and amplifying successful approaches, these efforts contribute to sustainable development and climate resilience at both regional and country level. Oceans are in crisis due to overfishing, pollution, and climate change. Women make up nearly half of the world's fisheries workforce, but are often concentrated in low-paid, insecure jobs. They face greater risks from ocean degradation and have fewer alternatives for livelihoods. UN Women advocates for women's representation in marine science and decision-making, ensuring that conservation strategies address their vulnerabilities and tap into their expertise for sustainable solutions. Forests and land are vital for environmental health and human well-being, but unsustainable practices have led to deforestation and land degradation. Women, often primary stewards of land and resources, are among the first affected by these changes. Limited land ownership reduces their capacity to adapt and make decisions. UN Women promotes gender equality in land rights and includes women in ecosystem management, recognizing their critical role in preserving biodiversity and promoting sustainable use. Peaceful, inclusive societies depend on the rule of law, equal access to justice, and protection from violence. Women are often disproportionately affected by conflict and violence, making up the majority of displaced populations. Despite progress, women remain underrepresented in peace negotiations and decision-making. UN Women supports women's engagement in peacebuilding, trains peacekeepers to address sexual violence, and advocates for gender-sensitive reforms in justice and security institutions. Zimbabwe, UN Women partnered with local organizations to establish women-led community early warning systems for violence and peacebuilding. These systems help influence gender-sensitive electoral processes and create safe spaces for women to discuss peace and security issues. Training and curriculum development for security sector institutions ensure that gender perspectives are integrated into peacebuilding and governance. Such initiatives strengthen women's roles in building effective, accountable institutions. Achieving the SDGs requires strong partnerships, finance, technology, and data. Women often face barriers in accessing these means of implementation. Gender-responsive budgeting helps direct resources to women's needs, but funding gaps remain. Only a small fraction of foreign aid targets gender equality, and many countries lack gender-specific data. UN Women leads efforts to expand data collection, promote women's access to technology, and foster partnerships that put women at the center of sustainable development. At the country level, UN Women works with resident coordinator systems to host donor coordination groups on gender in countries like Ethiopia and Rwanda. These partnerships help align resources, share best practices, and ensure that gender equality is integrated into national development strategies. By building strong networks and leveraging global expertise, UN Women supports countries in achieving the SDGs and advancing women's rights. Reliable, sex-disaggregated data is essential for tracking progress and designing effective policies. Yet only about a third of countries have offices for gender statistics. Without accurate data, it's difficult to know how many women lack access to basic services or face abuse. UN Women supports innovations in data collection and analysis, making women's issues visible and influencing policies that deliver on gender equality. Better data leads to better outcomes for women and society as a whole. Access to technology is a double dividend for women. It empowers them and supports environmental sustainability. UN Women helps women access and use technology, from agricultural innovations to digital platforms. Initiatives like the African Women in Technology (AWIT) connect women to resources, training, and networks, enabling them to lead in technology-driven sectors. Empowering women through technology accelerates progress across all SDGs. Men's leadership is crucial at all levels, from local communities to global forums. When women lead, policies and programs are more likely to address the needs of all citizens and promote inclusive development. UN Women supports women's participation in decision-making bodies, from parliaments to corporate boards, and advocates for quotas and other measures to increase representation. Leadership opportunities empower women to shape the future and drive sustainable change. Achieving gender equality requires the active involvement of men and boys. UN Women's He for She initiative encourages men to become champions of gender equality, challenging stereotypes and supporting women's rights. Engaging all members of society creates a supportive environment for women's empowerment and helps break down barriers to equality. Together, men and women can build more just and inclusive communities. Deep legal and legislative changes are needed to ensure women's rights worldwide. While many countries have made progress, gender discrimination persists in laws and social norms. UN Women works with governments to reform legal systems, promote gender-responsive budgeting, and implement policies that protect women's rights. Proactive measures such as quotas and affirmative action help close gaps and create equal opportunities for women in all spheres. Violence against women remains a global pandemic, affecting all countries and communities. UN Women raises awareness, advocates for legal protections, and supports services for survivors. Programs focus on prevention, response, and engaging communities to challenge harmful norms. By addressing the root causes of violence and promoting women's rights, societies can create safer environments where everyone can thrive. Economic empowerment is central to achieving gender equality. UN Women supports women in securing decent jobs, accumulating assets, and influencing economic policies. Programs address barriers such as unpaid care work, limited access to finance, and workplace discrimination. By partnering with the private sector and promoting the women's empowerment principles, UN Women helps create environments where women can succeed economically and contribute to sustainable growth. Education lays the groundwork for lifelong empowerment and opportunity. UN Women's initiatives focus on removing barriers to girls' education, promoting STEM fields, and supporting lifelong learning. By addressing stereotypes and providing resources, these programs help girls and women reach their full potential and contribute to social and economic development. Ensuring healthy lives for women and girls involves improving access to healthcare, addressing reproductive health needs, and ending harmful practices. UN Women partners with governments and NGOs to strengthen health systems, provide training, and support women living with HIV. Comprehensive, accessible health services are essential for women's well-being and for achieving broader development goals. Women's traditional knowledge and stewardship are vital for managing natural resources sustainably. UN Women supports women's participation in environmental decision-making, from local communities to international forums. By ensuring women have equal access to land, water, and technology, these efforts promote sustainable use of resources and protect the environment for future generations. Inclusive institutions are essential for sustainable development. UN Women works to ensure that women are represented in decision-making bodies, from local councils to national parliaments. Training, advocacy, and policy reforms help create environments where women's voices are heard and valued. Inclusive institutions are more responsive to the needs of all citizens and better equipped to achieve the SDGs. Men and girls are at the heart of the Sustainable Development Goals. Their empowerment and participation are essential for achieving a just, equitable, and sustainable world. From eradicating poverty to combating climate change, women's contributions drive progress across all areas. By investing in women, promoting gender equality, and building inclusive partnerships, we can realize the vision of the 2030 Agenda and create a better future for everyone.